right, happy Wednesday for everyone who is joining us on the call today for our bi-weekly webinar here at Gentian. Our goal in this is to really keep you informed of what's happening in between meetings. Now, coming up in a couple of weeks, we're going to have our big fall forum, which will be online as well. But these are really meant to give you an update to what's going on now, a few of our thoughts. I tend to want to put 20 or 30 things into this 30 minutes, and then I realize I can put on about, 2 to 3. So we appreciate your patience when we're trying to jam a lot of information into these in a very quick basis. We appreciate the fact that it's fall. I know we typically go big, so I want to go big and say I appreciate autumn, which is going to occur tomorrow, and it also happened on Monday. We went from 70 and 80 degrees to 55 for the high. So I think Thursday and Friday we'll experience that again. But I find fall and autumn a time for reflection. So if you put that together with COVID, and like I've been saying, this theme of metamorphosis, the butterfly, the cocooning, the metamorphosis of what's going on, we really get a chance right now to decide what junk you want to throw out, things that have accumulated, things you do, habits you've done. And we had a really inspiring quote here this week. It was to use soft heart and hard feet. So with people, use a soft heart, but use hard feet to go out and help people. So just something that we use as a very inspiring piece this year, maybe a good part for the fall as well. It's something that we'd like to use. So my gratitude is really that fall is beginning and everything that happens with it is happening in some form here. So we appreciate that piece as well. How about anyone else? And would you like to actually, before we go into more gratitude, I think what I would do is have Ashley begin with some of the housekeeping. This will be the first time you'll see her. Then we'll have some gratitude with Ken and Zach.
Thank you, Chris. It's my pleasure to be on here today. I just want to kick off with a few housekeeping items. And the first one that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention is that Gentian's Women Group is going to be hosting another gathering, and that is next week, Wednesday, which is September the 23rd, beginning at 11 a.m. So we hope that you'll join us. If you have not joined us before, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to give any insight or expand on the concept of the Gentian Women's Group with you individually. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Our next big event that we will be hosting is on Wednesday, September 30th, so about 2 weeks from now, and that will be our virtual fall forum. You have a couple of days to register before that September 21st deadline in order to check your mailbox for a sweet surprise, which should be delivered just a few days before the actual event. Again, on September the 30th, it will be Gentian's Fall Forum. And then after that, we will resume our normal bi-monthly webinars, which would be October the 14th. A couple of other little things that I wanted to mention and just bring light to is that if you have not had a chance to peek at our latest Gentian newsletter, that was sent out on September the 4th. It was a Friday before Labor Day. But please check that out. There's some great information from Gentian. All of our FAs contribute to that, so some great content in there. And if you didn't see the email, please check our website. It can be found under our Communications tab. Also, if you want to keep an eye out in your emails from one of our Gentian team members, you should see some fall scheduling. Again, those fall appointments are coming up and are being scheduled currently through Calendly, which allows you to choose your date and your time. So please just take a peek at your email and make sure to get a time that works great for you. That's all I have today. So I will switch it back over to Chris. But I wanted to say real quick that for my gratitude today, since Chris kicked it off that way, is that I'm happy that it's fall. It's one of my favorite seasons. A little something about me. And then also that my kids are not in virtual school this year, but they're actually getting to participate, meet their teachers, be involved at physical school, and get to know their friends in their new classrooms. So again, I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, so I'm just happy for them to feel a little bit normal and be in a new classroom this year. So thank you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much, Ashley. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, and we appreciate all the behind the scenes work that you do to make everything happen smoothly as well. So thank you. Really looking at what's going on right now, I want to kind of look at the bigger picture. So it's fall, there's some football going on, there's some basketball going on, some baseball going on, and some people are paying attention to it, some are. There's a lot of different ideas. I don't know if you've heard, but there's an election coming up. Many of you probably don't pay any attention to it. I know you never talk to us about it. That's not true, obviously, but we'll talk a little bit about that in a script that I want to talk about in these kind of situations, because about every 4 years, I have to prepare for a time that is about 60 days before an election. And we'll talk about that piece in here in just a moment. But one thing I want to stress, there's two ways to approach these. There's prediction and there's preparation. And there's two ways to approach the unknown. Now, let me tell you, the future, as we've always talked about, is what? It's unknown. The future in and of itself, even the next few minutes, is completely unknown. We don't know what'll happen. So when I look at this, we see a lot of people out there trying to predict results, and they get on television and they tell you all this stuff's going to predict, and they raise your anxiety level to go, if this happens, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and it's going to be horrible. So what happens to your anxiety? It goes up and through the roof, and all this stuff is not good for your health. I tend to, and we here at the firm tend to take a completely different tack on that, and that is preparation. So we have no idea what's going to happen. We want to prepare for the very best, and most importantly, the very worst case scenarios. So as we do this, we talk a lot about this. We've all mentioned it. Ken mentioned it last time too, in scenario planning. But I think it's an important piece because you can always be prepared for what's going to happen. We don't know what it's going to be. But what's really interesting about this is we can't predict what is going to happen. So the frustration is potentially that we're really concerned, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. If the House gets this, Senate gets this, if this happens, no. Well, there's a lot that's going to happen, unfortunately, and some people that you know in your lifetime won't be here with us. You know, unfortunately, we're going to have bad weather. Unfortunately, markets are going to crash at times, but we do know what the outcome of those will be. And if we're prepared for them, some of these different events, it makes a big difference in how we act toward them. So that's just a message from myself on the overall bigger picture. Coming up in a bit here, I'll give you a little bit of a script as well, but I want to let Ken share his gratitude as well before I continue on, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Hello, everybody. Great to be with you all as usual. My gratitude goes towards my family. I've gotten to know a lot of your families. I'll share a little bit about my family. My gratitude goes towards my wife, Sarah. She's really been the glue through all this. She's actually at home right now with 4 children on Zoom calls. My daughter Adriana's 9, Parker's 7, Isabella's 5, and my little boy Asher is 4. So we actually have 4 Zoom calls going on at one time. So my gratitude towards my wife, because that takes a lot of patience. Actually had to call Spectrum and increase the bandwidth because we have so many Zoom calls going on in our house at one time. But again, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful to know all your families and what you share as well. So it really goes out to the families today.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to go through here, Ken. Thanks for your gratitude on that as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this around for a minute here. I'm going to let Zach go over some of the market statistics. And I know that my speaker has said from a couple of people it's fairly scratchy. So what I'm going to do while they're doing that is try to do some technical changes here while I have Zach go through what's going on with the markets. Then I'll come through and I want to make a statement. Then I'll have Ken do some planning, and then we'll come up with a summary. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of format ahead of time. And if I will turn it over to Zach, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. My go big real quick is along the same lines as Chris and Ashley, actually, which is really funny, but I just really appreciate living in a place with 4 seasons. And this is actually the first year that I've ever really been looking forward to winter. So instead of seeing it as oh man, it's going to snow, it's going to be a tough time, I'm actually looking forward to continuing all the running that I've been doing and doing it no matter the weather. So that's my go big today, that we live in a place with challenges and opportunities in different seasons. But today for you, I got a few quick things to go over. First, just a real quick market update, not going to go into as much detail as we have in the past with markets, a couple financial planning questions that have come up in a few meetings, and then just a quick fact on this day in history. I'm a student of history and have a kind of an interesting fact to share with you guys as well. But starting out with just a quick market update, just the year-to-date numbers for the different indexes that we often see and talk about. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down about 1.56% on the year. The S&P 500 is up 5.61, and then the NASDAQ, if you guys remember, a little bit more technology weighted, is up 25.01% on the year. So those are the market up-to-date numbers there. And then for the financial planning side of the question, we've had some few reviews in the last couple of weeks with a couple of very similar questions for those of you that normally have required minimum distributions. The question that came up is, if I don't take my required minimum distribution or my RMD for 2020, will I have to double up in 2021? The answer is no, you don't have to double up your RMD in 2021, but it's just important to remember that your RMD could be slightly higher than it normally is because it's based off the balance of your IRA on December 31st at the end of the year. So December 31st of 2020 sets your RMD for 2021. And also, if you remember, as you get older, the divisor, the factor of what your RMD is, increases every year as well, so that your RMD could be potentially a little bit higher. The question that followed that a couple of times was, if I don't want to take my RMD for 2020 due to the CARES Act, can I just leave it there? Is there anything else that I should be looking at or doing? You certainly can just leave it there. And depending on your specific scenario, if you've already budgeted for the RMD for 2020, potential idea could be a Roth conversion. Normally you have to take your full RMD to be able to do so every year, but this is an opportunity where you could potentially do a Roth conversion before taking the full RMD amount. So if that applies to you, we'll continue to talk to you about that and take a look at that to see if it makes sense in your scenario. And just from one of our leaders in the industry that we work with, Ed Slott, regarding the Secure Act. Ken will go into more detail on this today as well regarding beneficiaries and the 10-year distribution with IRAs. But in a report that he came out with, he said that when it comes to beneficiaries, the 10-year rule, parts of this Secure Act still remain very unclear, which he stated sometimes the best response is, we don't know yet. So with a lot of these different scenarios with the Secure Act, it's important to just be very patient if this scenario comes up and applies to you, and we're constantly working and seeing to make sure that the Secure Act goes in path, especially with beneficiaries and the 10-year distribution rules. And then the third thing that we just wanted to mention today, just a quick fact, again, we're students of history. I absolutely love history, especially military history, but on September 16th, 1940, the Burke-Wadsworth Act was passed by Congress, which was the first peacetime draft in U.S. history was imposed. It started as men between the ages of 21 and 36, and then on November of 1942, when we were actually active in the war, it went down from age of 18 to 37. So kind of an extension of my gratitude as well. As I read that, I couldn't really imagine being 18 myself, getting drafted and going to war, or also my friends, and then the impact that it had on the families, and made me extremely appreciative for those of you that have served, knew someone that served, or current military members as well. So that was the quick fact on this day in history. But with that, I'll turn it back over to Chris and Ken.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. Ken, before I do my piece as well, why don't I turn it back over to you for gratitude and some of the planning, if you will. I think there's some great pieces on that. I'm going to run over some ideas about a couple of conversations I've had, but I'm going to frame it up in a little bit different way. So Ken, why don't I let you run through some of the planning? I think it's great, and share that, and let us know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Chris. We appreciate that. Yesterday was a great day. Had a chance to spend it with some of our what we call centers of influence, our partners, if you will. And a lot of you have met some of these people. We had 2 estate planning attorneys yesterday that we were able to meet with and talk with. 1 elder care attorney as well. Also an accountant was with us as well. And also a relationship we have at a place called Newcastle Place. That's where people transition into if they need care. And again, if you have questions on that, by all means, we can help guide you down that path to get that conversation started. So what I want to talk today a little bit about today is estate planning. It's a conversation that came up yesterday as we're with one of our preferred partners. There's a few misconceptions out there, so I wanted to kind of bring those to the forefront, if you will. A lot of this starts with, a lot of you probably remember Terry Schiavo. That's the one thing I remember of estate planning when I was a young man getting to know this business. That situation came to a head in kind of 2005. And that was really about power of attorney. That was really about healthcare power of attorney and directives. Do we keep Terry alive or do we not? That was really the big question. That was on the news. It was plastered everywhere. I remember that as a young man watching about this business. And when it comes to estate planning, if you haven't done your power of attorneys yet, please do so. This is something you do with an estate planning attorney. It's really, there's 2 parts to it. There's a healthcare power of attorney. There's also what we call a durable power of attorney. The healthcare power of attorney is kind of what it says. It really helps you with your medical wishes and directives there. Your durable power of attorney really handles the money of the estate, if you will. So paying bills and settling things up. Those can often be two different people based on our experience and what I've seen so far with what families have done. The healthcare power can really be more of the emotional support type of person in your family, where sometimes the numbers and the emotional support don't necessarily go hand in hand. Those can be two different people as well. What I wanted to talk about is a little bit about beneficiary planning, kind of on a simplistic level, not a simplistic, but maybe a overarching holistic level, is for the IRAs. This is for the IRAs right now. The beneficiary page is the playbook. The beneficiary page is the playbook. So a lot of times on our reviews that we've been doing with you, Julie, Lisa, Angie have been on the phone calls talking about beneficiaries. Chris, myself, Zach, Peter, we've been talking about beneficiaries with you all to make sure your wishes are exactly the way you want them. We've caught a couple of them where they weren't necessarily your wishes. So we'll continue to talk about that. It's a piece that's very important because the beneficiary is the playbook. It supersedes anything else you've done as far as planning goes. So whatever's on the IRA beneficiary page, let's make sure it's your wishes. Usually for primary, it's usually a spouse or a significant other. That's usually a very typical situation that we see. Now here's where it got interesting when we talked to one of our preferred partners yesterday on the contingent beneficiaries, is when the contingent beneficiaries are younger children, typically 21 years of age and younger. That's where a lot of conflict comes in as far as what you've heard out there. And really how that works is you really can't, I mean, you can name children as beneficiaries, but children under the age of 18 in the state of Wisconsin really can't control money. They need a guardianship. That gets appointed either by you, by having your wishes spelled out in your estate planning documents where you name a guardian who can step in and help the children with the money, that's the guardianship. Otherwise, the courts appoint a guardian for you. And that may not be the person you'd ultimately want to have happen. So documenting your wishes properly is a really, really important piece to all this as well. The other one, you have to kind of ask yourself is, if you haven't done any estate planning, you haven't set up guardianship or a trust if you have younger children, think of doing a trust or at least guardianship. But moving on kind of to the trust, that's where you can appoint a trustee. You can actually control how much, when the children get the money, how much they get and when they get it and how they get it. You can actually control quite a bit if you have a trust set up as well. Now, a trust isn't needed all the time, but it definitely is a way to spell out your wishes very clearly and very, very effectively as well. Because when someone's 18 or 21 and they receive, say, $500,000 of money, I kind of look back at, when I was 18 or 21, I don't know if the best decisions were being made to handle $500,000 or $1 million at that point in time, or even $100,000. So again, just something to keep in mind when you're looking at your situation, your scenario, and when it comes down to really having the proper beneficiaries in place as well. So one more thing here, and I'll hand it back over to Chris to share some of his thoughts and wisdom, is that on non-IRA accounts, so these are what we call personal accounts. These are areas and accounts that you've saved money along the way that it's not in a Roth IRA, it wasn't in a 401k, it wasn't in an IRA at all. It's what we call personal accounts. We've been very diligent about asking you about naming beneficiaries. For example, those are called transfer on death accounts now. That's naming a beneficiary. So it avoids probate, if you will. If you don't have a beneficiary on there, there might be some probate involved in that, and that gets kind of ugly. And so we really want to try to avoid that as much as possible. You've also heard of joint transfer on death accounts. Also bank accounts at the bank. Here for investment accounts, they're called transfer on death. At the bank, they're called payable on death, POD versus TOD. Just something to keep an eye on as well. So that's really the highlight there as far as the estate planning goes. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. We get a lot of questions on estate planning. So again, we're here to guide you. We know quite a bit in this area, but we'll also defer to some of our professional partners in the estate planning area as well. So I'll kick it back over to Chris to finish this off.
Phenomenal. I have absolutely nothing left to say. I'm joking. Absolutely joking. So thanks, Ken. I appreciate that. Thanks for the planning. Thanks for the ideas, and thanks for the estate planning. And the one thing that we see is that everything is interrelated. If you look at the world, if you look at planning, estate planning, just your fiscal planning and financial planning. So when we're looking for true wealth, which we're going to talk more about in the coming weeks, true wealth really occurs when you've got a lot of different pieces coming together. And the documents Ken is talking about often take what's most important to you, your true wealth, and it's a way to make sure that your assets are aligned to support those. So there's some really important pieces that come up in that. So we like to lay those baselines a lot of times just so we have a great understanding together for those. I want to change gears a little bit here, though, too, right now. You guys remember the term VUCA? VUCA, volatile, uncertain, changing, and ambiguous. 2020 pretty much defines it. Let's look at right now. Let's just look at presently. I've come up with a few of these ideas here. How about fires? You know, and it reminds me actually of a joke about fires. Did you hear about the fire at the circus? It was intense. Anyway, I had to throw one dad joke because somebody reminded me I hadn't thrown one in a very long time, so I had to throw it in. May not be funny because what's happening out west is devastating to many, so I don't mean to bring light to that. But right now, with VUCA, fires. How about hurricanes? How about elections? How about civil unrest, COVID? For a year that started with a ton of promise and a ton of opportunity, this year has really kind of spiraled into something much different. And what that's done is raised a lot of people's anxiety. 6 times in my career, I have faced an absolutely horrible time. Absolutely horrible. I mean, it's rife with all sorts of wranglings back and forth. It's rife with, you know, gnashing and wailing and just all sorts of conflict. And you know what it's called? Election time. So when you look at it, it tends to bring out the fear, especially with everything else going on now. We're starting to see things that people are really starting to get stirred up about this. And it's without fail, every election cycle, I'll get a call or a few calls from some clients. And I want to go through a little bit of what that is. The first thing is something will have happened to somebody that we talked to some friends. I was up with some conservative friends. And if so-and-so gets into the office, I'm certain the whole thing's going to hell. There's no way it's going to be repaired. What they'll do to the economy is really, really poor, and we're never going to recover. That's usually how the phone call comes in. And then I love to listen. I love to hear why. I love to listen to those kind of pieces. And they say, I want to sell everything I have, is oftentimes what the client will say. And I'll say, okay, let me ask you a couple of questions. So you're telling me that if you sell right now, and you're right about this, and the market goes down 30%, the world looks actually like it's going to hell in a handbasket, that you're going to have the gumption to buy back in then, because that's the only way that you're going to benefit from this. And then there's often some quiet on the phone. Well, the conversation kind of stops. Well, I'd evaluate it. So, okay, so you're saying you won't buy back in. Well, let's say that on the opposite side, that you're wrong. The other party gets in and it goes up 20%, or they're happy that the party you had got in and it goes up 20%. You're going to buy right back in. Is that right? Well, I'll evaluate it at that point in time. So at this point, we've come to an impasse where no matter what, you've told me that neither one of these scenarios are going to lead to a positive outcome. So to the goal-focused planning investor, which are our clients, I understand emotions can get strong. But again, these 6 periods of time have really driven people, especially with what's going on now to this time, they believe that it may be different. I've had the same thing that it may be different 6 times, so it's not unfamiliar. Let me give you one scenario. And here's what you do with our relationship. You put us in a bind. And the bind is this. So for Ken, myself, Zach, Peter, our whole team, we are now in a no-win situation. The no-win situation is now you are in control of your plan because you decided to do something that we completely did not agree with. And that becomes this. If by chance you sold and the market drops and corrects, or maybe you sold half and the market drops, you see, I was right. If you didn't sell and the market drops, I'll see I was right. You should have sold everything. Now, the other side of the equation is if you do sell out and the market goes up 20% or more, we're now in a no-win situation again, which is, oh, see, you should have talked me out of it. So there's really, at the end of this scenario for you and us, it's a no-win situation with the outcome of it, because when you ask us when you should get back in is right now. But I just sold. The client was, no, I'm telling you, I think you should get back in right now. And that's going to be my answer every time you ask me, because I never think you should have gotten out. One of the reasons I like to bring this scenario up is because it's become, with many of you who've been with me for a very long time, it's become less and less and less. But from time to time, myself, Ken, Peter, we'll get a surprise. We'll just get a surprise call or a request. And some of our clients will be requesting things because they think that they can predict the future instead of being prepared for the future. The way our portfolios are put together will often compromise and say, why don't we maybe put 1 to 2 years of money aside in a very safe fund to get through this? Because historically, I want to tell you something. We got some great research from Raymond James and great research from Vanguard. And it's pretty interesting. If you look at, first of all, volatility, oh my gosh, it's got to be horrible around elections. Well, actually, historically, I think volatility is around 15.8 or so during normal times, but the 100 days before and the 100 days after election, it's actually 13.8, signifying that those 100-day periods of time before and after are actually less volatile than normal history. So that's not what people think. We just like to give you some of this data behind the scenes. First of all, we hope you trust us in what we say, and you trust us for the advice and we guide for you and your family. But sometimes we like to give you data on this as well. The second one is, and we just had a research paper done since 1870, and it's pretty crazy. If you go back to 1860, it shows that during election years, the average return for the market is 8.9%. So that's 40 periods since 1870. So if you go actually to the non-election years, those are the years in between, there's 120 periods, the average return is 8.1%. So a lot of people think that volatility and the market crash and all those occur. And don't get me wrong, elections are important, just not for client portfolios. I think people think it's going to affect the returns, and it may in the very short term. But again, like COVID, 6 months ago, if you would have sold at March 23rd at the bottom of the market, how would you feel today? It becomes the same thing for election. You don't know what's going to happen. You didn't know what's going to happen. That should be the evidence that we need. So I know sometimes it's the teaching and it's the perspective we can offer. I just want to offer that to you because I've been through this game before. The first time I was a bit surprised. The second time I was a bit prepared. The third time I had resolve and am prepared. The fourth, fifth, and sixth, and seventh time, we're here. We're here for you. We're prepared for you. We have these conversations. We talk about it because we know that from time to time it may come. For the 99.9% that don't call us for it, but think about it, I just wanted to put this out there for you to be able to use, to understand the conversation and our position. We're not market timers. We understand crazy things will happen. Taxes will go up. Markets will correct. You're going to see all sorts of things that occur, right? But these are things we've been prepared for in election and non-election years. This was a great statement I've heard once. Warren Buffett often says, to make decisions for your investments based on politics is a pretty silly thing long term. And he means that because the results don't add up to what you think they're going to. But I think this is a great way to look at it. During times where we get near elections, people think that elections mean everything. But to look at elections and look at really investments through the prism of elections and politics is a really bad thing, because historically you'll find that we are an economic engine, everybody trying to do good for others and be useful, way more than we are, I'm going to do this today because of who's president or who's in the Congress or who's in the Senate. So when you look back at it on history, elections have always been very messy, and I think you know our definition of politics, which is poly, from the Greek word meaning many, and ticks, which are blood-sucking insects. So when you get to it, you see some very rough times now, but I want to remind you of a few of these times. And again, elections matter, just not so much for the client portfolio on a historic basis that you've seen. So I wanted to really end in that because I know there's a lot of strife out there now, and we don't need any more of that. I think what's a good time now is to use the hard feet and the soft heart to go out and reach out to somebody, be useful to them. Go out and do something that's great for somebody else. Ken mentioned it before. Some family members, of our family reached out to everybody in the family, and we're very blessed, and they did some great things for them. That's what I really would wish for you. Go out to your family members or people in the community who may not be doing as well from this, because there's a lot of people benefiting and there's a lot of people not benefiting, because there's a massive shift in this. And more importantly, there's a ton of anxiety. So use your soft heart to be kind to people. Be grateful to people. List what you're grateful for. These are the things we think that are super important right now for us as well. I've run 1 minute over. I appreciate your time and listening here as well. The most important thing I think that we want to tell you is that we're here for you. We're here doing research for you. We're preparing for the next massive program we have coming. Again, it'll be a bit more technical, it'll be a bit longer, probably an hour or two. You can watch it upon your own accord. We'll try to chunk some bits and pieces out of it and maybe send some of the highlights to you as well. But we do prepare quite a bit for this over the quarter, if you will. When we come to this one, these are kind of fun. So we get to do these. And for those of you who love the investments and the charts and all that stuff, we really enjoy sharing those pieces as well. But I want to introduce one more piece. We're going to start doing something with what we call true wealth, and also a blueprint for your retirement. So many of you have been retired for a long time. We're going to start with you and ask that some of our clients participate in a session that's going to be about finding your true wealth and putting a blueprint together of what you want to accomplish from here on out. Because very rarely do people sit down and do that. And I found with the few people we've done it with, as we're sitting down, Ken, myself, Peter, and Zach, as we're sitting down with them, you're finding, whoa, I've never really done that before. And they find it incredibly energizing to give some clarity to what they want to do from here on out. So again, we understand we're here for finance, but we know that this finance really supports what's important to you and what we call your true wealth. So for those of you who'd like to, we'd love to have you come along that journey with us as well. So we appreciate that. We're going to speak more about that as we go along as well. And I wanted to go through anything else, Ken, Zach, anybody else want to say anything else before we go? No? Well, fair enough. So, of course, we here at Gentian want to let you know that we're serious about our guidance for you. We want to get you through times like these horrible times like elections. The good news is in 55 days, generally, I'm not sure that the results will be known, but the elections will be over. So maybe you'll stop getting people texting you and calling you at home every 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, which is quite crazy. Well, wealth management is what we do. Getting you through tough times and guiding you through planning is who we are. So with that, go out, be kind, be grateful. Be humble, be the change that you want to be what the world needs. And we appreciate you. We appreciate your trust. Thank you for being a client of ours. Thank you for reaching out to us. And we appreciate you being on the call today with your beautiful, beautiful Wednesday at 11 o'clock Central Time. So thank you. We look forward to 2 weeks from now when we get to speak for a couple of hours to you, to those who have the patience, the intention to listen. So thank you from all of our team here at Gentian. Thank you for your day, and thank you for your trust in us. Enjoy.